All right, we got 5 seconds here. Quiet on set. Here we go. All right, what's up, everybody? Today's guest, Build Up Saskatoon Program Manager, Timoshyk. Did I say it? Timoshyk worked in the oil patch where he saw a lot of his coworkers fall into challenges with substance use and quickly be discarded to end up homeless or worse. Today, he is in studio with me to discuss how he's fighting back against these systemic failures with his organization. Good morning, Aaron.
Morning. Thanks so much for inviting me in today.
Well, thank you for coming. I know it was very short notice. You know, I think I've said that for the past 3 or 4 Friday morning shows in a row. It's always been like the stars align at the last possible moment.
Who doesn't love spontaneity, right?
Yes. Yeah. And they've all turned out to be very impactful guests. So the bar is set very high for you this morning.
Oh, well, I'll try not to disappoint.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we jump in?
I'm just grateful to have a platform to kind of talk about some of the stuff that we do for our folks who we consider, valuable human beings who may otherwise be viewed in a different light by society, and just an opportunity, hopefully, to maybe change 1 or 2 minds if anybody, takes the time to keep an open mind.
Awesome. Okay, let's jump in.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
Okay, today's episode is title sponsored by Quint Developments. For over 25 years, Quint Developments has recognized the complex and interrelated challenges that many residents in Saskatoon's core neighborhoods face, such as homelessness, trauma, mental health issues, and substance use, and respond to these challenges by adapting its approaches and collaborating with other community stakeholders to create strong and vibrant communities. To learn more about this community-based organization that strives for social and economic well-being, look for their link in the show notes. So I always like to start out with asking what your why is. Like, why are you here today? Why do you do what you do?
Without sounding crass, I guess maybe I'm a bleeding heart. I like to believe that, every human being deserves a chance, deserves an opportunity to kind of live their best life. Some of us are born in really fortunate circumstances and don't have to face too many barriers in our life.
Was that you?
It was me. I had a very supportive family. I was very lucky to have a lot of opportunities pop up for me that allowed me to kind of move in directions that of my choosing. And I recognize a lot of folks don't have that. And a lot of folks, have considerable barriers. They didn't win life's lottery and get born into a place that has all those supports. So,
it's interesting to me when someone from your upbringing, or generally speaking, right, that doesn't have these challenges or didn't necessarily live alongside someone with these challenges directly, finds themselves in the position that you're in today, serving community in this way. What did you see? Like, what really fueled your desire to get into this work?
Well, I think in searching for my path in life, so to speak, as a younger man. I figured, well, everybody goes to university. That's just what you do. But after graduating, I didn't really have a good sense of what it was I wanted to do with my life. So I moved out to, like many folks from the East Coast, I moved out to Alberta in search of, an opportunity, and decided I'd pay off my undergrad working in the oil patch.
Yeah, Fort McMurray, the capital of Nova Scotia.
Oh, in my case, it happened to be Red Deer. So,
okay.
And for several years worked in a lot of blue collar industries looking for that thing that was going to speak to me. And along the way, I got to meet a lot of folks who came from very different backgrounds, whose life experience was really different from my own. And it really amplified for me just like how good I had it and how fortunate I was to have the supports I had in my life that allowed me to randomly go out on some adventure halfway across the country to seek my destiny, so to speak. And a lot of folks, this is the one and only path they had. They grew up in a family that were really limited opportunities. My dad did this, my brothers do this, my granddad did this, so I'm going to do this because this is literally the only opportunity.
This is what we do.
And this is what we do.
Yeah.
And that comes with a lot of baggage. And that, not is it just the job itself, it's the culture that surrounds that kind of work and that industry, and
Was there ever any time, maybe early on, where you came into contact with people who were having these struggles and you would think what's wrong with these people?
Oh man, you saw a lot of it. And you didn't have to go out of town for very long, working, on the road. to see at the end of the workday, to see how people cut loose, got rid of their stress. And, it was so normalized from the people around me that it took a while to get used to it, to process it, to, maybe my own sheltered upbringing, and there was a certain degree of shock. But everyone else seemed to take it in such stride that I just felt like, hey, this is just a cultural thing. I'm a fish out of water. This is completely acceptable here, or it seems to be. And so I thought, well, maybe I need to adjust my perspective.
That was going to be did you ever indulge in these cultural practices? Like, was there ever any risk there?
I mean, I definitely would say that, you get pulled into it. I engaged in probably a few self-destructive behaviors while I was out there because, otherwise you kind of come across as a narc. Like, who are you? Like, what do you mean you don't drink and you don't indulge in these other things? And so, those elements of the culture, it was very hard, even though I didn't necessarily have like a rough upbringing, or I'm not like born, dyed in the wool, blue collar. In order to kind of fit in with the team, in order to, fit in with the culture, there's a lot of overt and like very subtle pressure to kind of fit into that mold of what does it look like to be a person who works in this industry. And yeah, I mean, I did some things. I did some a lot of kind of stuff I look back on now and say like that wouldn't have been a healthy choice, but it's what you do just to survive in that environment. And fitting in is incredibly important in an environment where you're working on a really small team, where the work you do day in, day out could get you killed if you do things the wrong way. And those bonds, people really need to be able to trust you. And if you're the square who is, straight arrow, and everybody else has different ways of dealing with their stress and different ways of dealing with the end of the day, it can be a challenge.
And even now with this was some time ago that you were doing this work, and back then, and even to some extent now, even leadership will look the other way because they worry about the bottom line, right? Like, oh, if we piss tested everybody, no work would ever get done because no one would be here.
100%. And a lot of it is, as long as it doesn't happen here in front of me on site, I'll look the other way. What you do after hours is up to you. Just make sure you're good enough to be upright and capable of doing the job at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you get to decide what's good enough.
Exactly. And of course, I mean, certain rules are bent, and like you say, looking the other way occasionally. I mean, I was on the receiving end of some health and safety stuff that probably wouldn't be above board in terms of behaviors that happen on site that resulted in injuries and things like that. Because if somebody has been allowed on site and they have been indulging, you can't report that. Like that gets everybody in trouble.
And it is such, and like being a safety practitioner myself, like, man, that's a lot of paperwork, and along with that comes the admin cost of conducting the investigations and things like that. So like for someone to fail a drug test on a job site, like that's a big deal.
And you deal with those things like, so I had a few broken fingers as a result of an injury that took place on the job site, and we were a considerable distance out of town, and I was more or less told like, suck it up. We're not shutting down the job site for you. You just push past these things. We'll put you on light duty. We'll figure out a way to make it work. And the pressure, that you're a tough guy, and you just have a few extra beer in the evening, and you'll feel no pain. That it's a really challenging culture, and to understand that this is not new, and that this is wide ranging, really was, for lack of a better term, kind of sobering for somebody who had never been exposed to this kind of life before.
So now we understand you've experienced this culture, but it wasn't just in experiencing the culture that really opened your eyes to the need for what you do today. It was watching your coworkers fall through the cracks. Can you tell us what you started to see that sort of shifted your thinking? Yeah,
I mean, it became pretty clear that there wasn't really much of a safety net for folks. If they didn't have a really, really strong supportive family, and family was a difficult thing to maintain when you're doing that kind of work. If you didn't have really, really tight friends, it was very easy for folks to go off the rails, and then all of a sudden, nobody wants to talk to you. You've got no place to stay. There's no couch for you to crash on. You're taking your stuff to Salvation Army because you came back home.
I just want to step back for a second there. Sure. And when we're talking about having a supportive family, oftentimes people who are struggling with substances and mental health challenges and all the destructive behaviors around that, oftentimes their support system is not in place due to that behavior in the first place. So
Yeah,
it
and
just
I
gets
mean,
worse and worse.
yeah, because I mean, if you're struggling with alcohol, but your dad's an alcoholic,
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to find, you know, that support? And again, I mean, some of these behaviors were just so ingrained and so accepted that, you know, if you did go off the rails looking for help, like, who is the person who is going to give it to you? Because everybody else is kind of in a similar situation. And there's 1,000 other people who can do your job standing behind you, so you're replaceable. And you know, that kind of disposability for people was kind of it was harsh. It was harsh to see like that somebody could fall on hard times, and no one will miss them because there'll be another body to take their place the next day, and lots of people that are eager to do what they do.
And then they end up like, did you ever see where these people ended up? Like, did you ever see them on the street or wherever?
I hear just anecdotally through, hey, did you hear what happened to so-and-so? Or, hey, I ran into so-and-so downtown. They looked a mess. Or I saw so-and-so in an alley behind this building. And, you know, the folks who went off the rails, you know, it's like they disappeared because at the time, particularly in Red Deer, there wasn't a lot of places where folks who were in crisis could go. There wasn't things like, you know, a lot of like food banks and Salvation Army kind of equivalents or safe injection sites or things like that. It was just folks just more or less just disappeared. And, you know, often, you know, the community certainly found it better to kind of turn a blind eye to that. It's an ugly kind of story that nobody really wanted to engage with.
So why did you leave the oil patch?
Accumulation of those experiences. I basically said, like, I have to make a choice about, you know, where I'm going to spend my time. I mean, the money was great, as you know, the tale often goes, but it's also a really cyclical industry where there's highs and lows. And I would say maybe a little bit risk averse. So the idea of not knowing if I'm going to have a job in 6 months time or a year. So I said, I have the ability to walk away. I have the skills of training, motivation. So, I moved on to steel fabrication for a while and then a number of other gigs before ultimately going back to school to become a teacher in my 30s. So
was there ever any desire, like leaving the oil patch, seeing what you saw, so that planted the seed for you?
Yeah.
You would say? Now, was there an intention when you left the oil patch to try and help, or did that come a little bit further down the road?
I think it wasn't until I started teaching and I started working with younger folks who, you know, particularly when I was teaching in Red Deer, and I would have students who say, I don't need school. I can just quit and go work in the oil patch. I don't need my graduation. I'm in grade 10. I can go work in the oil patch. And to think of
warning bells, I'm sure.
Yeah. These 16-year-old kids, and my older brother's doing it. My uncle's doing it. My dad's doing it. And I look at this, you know, a pretty vulnerable age, right? And very impressionable. And okay, yeah, I guess that is an option. You could go out there into the oil patch, but I don't think, seeing what I saw, the idea that a 16-year-old would say, essentially, I'm going to throw away all the other paths that I could walk in life and take this one because it's the most convenient. It's the shortest route from here, point A to point B, and my family all does it. And that it kind of bothered me a bit to see that for a lot of folks, that was what they viewed as their only option. And
so, is this your first step into community service then, so to speak, like with Build Up Saskatoon? Do you have any community service in the books before that?
I would say, aside from small bits of volunteer work here and there over the years, it was never front of mind for me, you know, really until I became a teacher and started working with like kids from vulnerable communities, that I actually think that, you know, there may be something more to this. And ultimately, teaching, while it is wonderful and it's a very, very important profession, it has limitations to what you can do on a day-to-day basis. You know, you're working within that curriculum and you have administrative tasks and et cetera, et cetera. The opportunity to work in the organization I'm in now gives me a lot more freedom to kind of pursue what I feel are the important objectives to help the people that are the most vulnerable. So,
we've got my good friend Barb Fornsler in the chat. Good morning, Barb. Let's see, what do we got here? This ties into where we're going, I think, in what you're doing now. Barb asks, do you think there are ways employers can better support workers? Is it possible to make working conditions better?
Yeah, I mean, it's this is a huge question, right? I mean, this is about changing cultures in a lot of ways, because particularly in male dominated workplaces, you're bringing a lot to the table when it comes to like, what is a man, what is a man's job? How do men behave in the work site? And you're overcoming like years and years of ingrained behaviors and attitudes that, are not necessarily self-destructive, but they're also not necessarily the things that are the most positive. Yes, I got hurt on the job and I'm just going to keep it quiet to myself because I don't want to be a wimp.
Don't want to be weak.
I don't want to be perceived as weak, or, I'm not going to, talk about my family or whatever, because the perception of, it's girly to talk about your kids or your wife or what have you.
Go hug your wife then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are there things that we can do? Yeah. But I mean, ultimately there's really big cultural issues that we got to push past, there are positive work sites. There are great employers who can do things that make it feel like a family, which is really, really important. But ultimately there's just this undercurrent, and it's a pressure-filled environment. It's the impression that, trades are for people who can't do any of the more complex tasks, like, oh, you don't go to university, therefore you take a trade, like it's a second class job. It's a complete misunderstanding of what the trades are and what they do, the pressures that folks work under, the skill required to do this work. And I think there's maybe just a lack of appreciation for what the trades are. And it kind of feeds into that cultural narrative that ultimately, there's a perception almost like these folks are second class citizens to some degree, right? And that starts in school. And I saw that we streamed kids towards university almost 100% of the time. Yeah. And unless you're in a trade school specifically, the goal, if you win at education, you go to university. And that creates pressures, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, we've got Ronnie, my friend Ronnie Nordell. Do you know Ronnie Nordell?
I don't believe
you don't. Oh, well, you're going to at some point. I promise you that. She recently moved to Saskatoon. Ronnie says she's a strong harm reduction advocate. Ronnie says, I married into a proud family of plumbers and pipe fitters, proud members of the UA Local 179, and our son followed in his career path for a short time after high school. She goes on to say, I'm glad to see the conversation happening. The trades are a fantastic career choice with great people in them.
Thanks, Ronnie. And I think that's exactly why our organization was designed to be what it is. So Build Up essentially is the organization that basically we use the trades as a way for an opportunity for folks who come from these vulnerable backgrounds. So primarily folks with a criminal record. You say, hey, listen, we're going to give you some skills to get you on your feet. And then these skills, you can transfer them to a really meaningful career that's in incredibly high demand right now as well. So the trades, I think, are a fantastic gateway for folks to, not only kind of begin to feel pride in their work, but you can really tangibly see the growth in your skills. And so, and you don't necessarily see that in every job,
Well, and that's the beautiful thing that I've come to realize in my own healing journey, away from substance use, is that we all want to feel okay, and as a tradesman and as a man, coming up, you touched on this a little earlier, I was always trying to find my own power. Right. And I was always trying to find my place. And I would see people out there, like even at a young age, I would see them out there drinking and using and not having rules. And I thought that, wow, those people are powerful. They don't have to listen to anyone, And then I moved into the workplace and stuff like that. And that sort of came along with me. And I harmed a lot of companies in my active addiction, So I've come to realize that we all want to feel better. We all want to feel okay. That is not an addiction thing. That is a human condition thing, right? And some of us just start to, like, in my deepest part of my addiction, like I was addicted to fentanyl and I had a welding company. And if I can just take a pill and feel meaningful, feel like I'm fulfilled today, I can lay on the couch and watch Judge Judy. Meanwhile, my company's burning to the ground, right? At some point in my recovery, I had to tighten up my bootstraps again. Of course, we all need our different places to heal. We all need to have that safety net for a while, but at some point we need to step a little bit outside of that. And I believe what you're doing is a great step in that direction, because you still offer supports that many employers may not offer, right? So tell us a little bit about that. What is the difference between you and say just your regular construction company?
Okay, I mean this is really the bread and butter, right? So you can have a construction company with really progressive, thoughtful, fantastic people to work for,
And I've
really
worked for
great
many.
company. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
have all those things, and there are those companies exist.
Mhm.
What sets us apart is the complete lack of barriers for entry to working with us. You don't have to have a roof over your head. You can be coming from a shelter.
You need ID?
You don't need ID.
That's beautiful.
We get you that ID. We work through the processes to get you that stuff. You could be 2 days out of prison. You could be right out of treatment. We invite you in. If you have made the choice for yourself that you're ready for a change, you just need some help to get on the right track.
Mhm.
We cover all of the things to get you started. We help you set up your bank account. We help you get your driver's license. We help you get IDs. We help you find a roof over your head.
Mhm.
And along the way, you're working with people who have very similar kind of experiences to yourself. You're in a community of people who are in different places in their journey and who can lean on each other for support, who've walked that path. We have folks who've transitioned out of gang lifestyles, folks who are single moms who've come from the reserve and are trying to overcome addictions, folks who've, spent years and years living on the streets and have now come to some crossroads where they feel like this organization exists. I should take advantage of it and see if I can figure out another path. No judgment. You come to us as long as there is some spark in you that you have the desire to do this. We will pour our money and invest it into training you, getting you construction certifications, training, experience. There is nothing quite like sitting with somebody. I'm driving a guy to site a couple months ago, and he turns to me and he said, I think I'm good at this. He's like, the only thing I've ever been good at in my life is dealing drugs. He's like, this may be the first thing I think I've ever been good at.
Did you ugly cry?
And, it's great, man. Oh, yeah. But it's, and this person is now using their own money to purchase tools on their own. Even though we supply them, they want their own tools because they're starting to take such pride in the work they do. And they're talking about the future. In a year, I want to do this. In 2 years, I want to do this. And the fact that they're in a place now where they're allowed to dream, and it's not unrealistic. It's not just a fantasy. This is something that's now attainable, that they've come as far as they have in 6 months with us, that they're able to kind of talk about that stuff is really impactful. It's really, it's awesome to see.
Do you ever see anyone, when we look at your story, you said you saw people in the trades falling through the cracks, ending up on the streets. Do you ever see people in this community who have walked that journey?
Oh, I can't. I mean, so many of the folks that, we've had as supervisors, we've had as lead hands, are people that at some point in their past have really struggled. A lot of folks they're clean. They're, X number of years sober, and they find our organization attractive. They're interested in coming on board as a supervisor because they feel they can bring their own experience. Maybe they were never in prison, maybe they were never homeless, but they struggled with the bottle, or they, had other kind of extracurricular activities that they really battled with. And to be able to take that experience and bring it to our crew who, are quite vulnerable in many cases, are not that many steps away from, the darker parts of their life, and to be there as a mentor and say, like, I did it, you can do it too, or let me help you through how, 10 years ago when I was struggling and I was at my lowest, here's how I got through it. And that experience for our guys and gals is incredible. I interviewed a lady yesterday who was aware of the success of another lady that we've hired, and said, we were in the reintegration unit together getting out of prison, and I've heard how well she's done for herself over the last several months.
Word of mouth.
And yeah, I want to follow. I want a shot too. I want to hopefully get my kids back one day. I want to, heal my family. I want to overcome my addictions. And, that's incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful.
So what I was getting at though earlier, and that's amazing that people are coming out of the woodwork to help. Have you seen anybody that has come looking for support that came from a blue collar background, ended up on the street, and now is working with you, coming back up from the ashes?
Yeah. There's folks that have, things happen in people's lives, right? You lose a partner, you lose a job. Maybe you were a recreational drinker and that became something else because you lost a job, or, you got injured. Injuries often
yeah.
come up, right? Like I wrecked my back, I wrecked my shoulders, I can't do this anymore. And I was I was a pipe fitter, or I was a plumber. I wrecked my back, I can't bend over anymore. So the trade I had, I can't use. And now what do? I'm useless, and so there's some self-destructive behaviors. And so, yeah, there's people who've they've fallen down and have found a way to kind of get back up and come to us at some point in their journey. And so we've seen it.
That feeling of uselessness, that's a killer, man.
It's brutal.
It's a killer. That if you don't feel like you have a place, like, I mean, even if you look into the anonymous fellowships, and especially maybe, a big part of recovery is service. A big part of recovery is finding actual meaning in your life. And like when you say like, I'm useless without my trade. Well, no, that's not true. There's other things we can do. Like I'm a journeyman welder, and now look what I'm doing today. Like it's completely, I did not see this shit coming. I am not going to lie.
Right. And I mean, and that's, and to, when they come to us, it's not, hey, listen, your future is the trades. You come to us and we're like, we're going to happen to use some trades training to help you choose whatever future it is you want. You could be a chef, you can be an airline pilot, you could be a social worker. We're just using the trades at the moment as a way for you to stabilize, gain some skills, put some money in your pocket, get some support, and encourage them to think like, hey, your future's wide open. You could do anything with your future now. Like as long as you continue walking the path and
keep showing up,
accept the support and ask for help when you need it, and lean on the people who've been there, you can do anything. And there's no expectation that folks ultimately, become Red Seal carpenters or plumbers or scaffolders or whatever. They can do whatever they wish. They're welcome to stay with us as long as they want, or they can take what they need from us and move on to something else, And it's the idea that your future is your choice. We're just a stepping stone along the way to hopefully, help you get where you want to go.
So you mentioned last night when we were talking that there are places where you are finding work where you have legit heard other construction companies say, we're not going in there because it's dangerous, because there may be, vulnerable people around, people who are unwell, and they see that, and, with the thinking in today's society, they just refuse to go there. How is your construction company different in, like, where does their willingness come in? Like, do they not also feel unsafe in these situations?
Right. I mean, I think anybody who lives in an urban center is familiar with the term like a service ghetto, where, ultimately like a lot of those services for vulnerable people tend to be, they ultimately are overrepresented in tough parts of the community, right? And in our case, in Saskatoon, it's the core,
in fact, there's pushback from the business community around, they don't want any more of these organizations in the core neighborhood because they feel like it's drawing the wrong crowd.
Exactly. And I mean, for, even prior to my moving here, the reputation of 20th Street and, the West Side and things like this
to this day.
Yeah. And, you can go to just about any city and you hear about this stuff, right? So there are, places you don't want to go or places that aren't ideal. And in our case, because we are a community service organization, we want to mobilize the skills that we have as an organization to help our brother and sister organizations who do similar work. So any organizations that are in the core that are looking to help the community, who we can use some of our construction skill, we've got a leak in our roof, or, our bathroom, has an issue, or we need a fresh coat of paint somewhere. We would love to engage with those organizations. And we've heard more than once that they have reached out to mainstream contractors and have been told these neighborhoods are too dangerous. We don't want to work there. We don't want to be exposed to, the elements that exist around your business. And those realities exist, right?
Yeah.
And
I, frankly, I'm sitting here and like, it's unfortunate that those conversations are being had in that way, but at the same time, I kind of understand, you know, like looking from the outside in, and I'm sure maybe you can relate to what they're going through as well, but
just because you've been through it doesn't mean you want to be around it. Right. And I mean, our guys, who have been addicted, who have been incarcerated, it doesn't mean they want to live next to somebody who's also addicted and been incarcerated. I mean, everybody's aspiring, to live a kind of a better life, right?
Get out the hood.
Even though our guys are, and gals are completely, comfortable moving through the hood, and they know how to operate in these environments. It doesn't mean it's ideal, right? And of course, there's reminders of, your past that is there. And, there's, I hate to use the term triggering, but I think it's kind of, there are those elements where you're like, wow. Or you see people
Yeah,
that you used to know from the life.
At lunch break type
right?
thing.
You know,
Yeah.
or you see family members.
Yeah.
You know, you see cousins, you see siblings, you know, who are still out there in it, you know, in
and
in
here
the struggle.
you are doing better. Do you ever get anyone coming up to your crew or communicating with your crew, maybe trying to like tear them down, like bring them back into the life?
I don't think the people who do it think that's what's happening. You know,
Mm.
it's hey, my long lost cousin knocked on my door last night and wanted a place to crash, or hey, it's my stepbrother who, you know, is saying I owe him because he helped me out 3 years ago.
Survival
And
mode.
yeah, it's a lot of friends and family who now see Bill or Mary, who's now
Opportunity.
doing really well. And now, because you have your life together, so to speak, you now have to be a champion for all of the people in your life who are not there yet. And, you know, oh, your uncle tells you, I'm tired of looking after your nephew. It's your turn. Now they're going to come crash with you. And I don't think that the objective is to tear them down necessarily, but here is a person who seems to have their stuff together and our family's struggling. Let's, you know, hand off
help us out.
some of our challenges to this person.
Yeah.
And it just redoubles that burden on them, because for a lot of these folks, they're learning how to live a normal life for the first time, what I would consider a normal life. And that's scary for somebody who's been incarcerated for, you know, 9 of the last 10 years and they're only 25. You know, they've never learned how to build normal life skills. So that is a highly stressful environment. And now they also have the stresses of their past are coming back.
Yeah.
And you know, they're trying to carry a load that it's remarkable when I think of what folks are bringing to work with them every day and managing to push through.
Do you ever, and I know you mentioned a little earlier, there was a woman that knew another woman that was in your program and she wanted to follow suit. Do you ever get that, like boots on the ground? Like, are you ever on a job site and someone says, oh, hey, cuz, and they come over and be like, yeah, hook me up. I want to work too.
We've had people for our work crews who are out on the streets. We've had like folks who are homeless come up and ask our crew. They see our, you know, some of our guys, it's pretty obvious they're not, you know, mainstream laborers. You know, there's visible, so, you know, facial tattoos and things like this that say, oh, this is a different organization that would hire somebody who looks like this.
Yeah.
And they'll be, you know, somebody will walk up to them and say, hey, what are you guys all about? You know, they've got a blanket over their shoulders. All of their worldly belongings are on their back. And, you know, our guys will say, here's the address. Go talk to our boss. You know, and he'll talk to you. And I've had folks who've set up homeless camps outside of our shop. And I've brought them in for interviews, and we've talked to them about, like, where are you? What do you need to do to get your life together?
Do you want to get your life together?
Do you want to get to, are you in a place yet to start that journey? And if you're not, do you want help to try to move on down that path?
Yeah.
Because, you know, they may, in their mind, they may say, I think I want to change, but they just don't know what steps need to happen to get there.
So what does that look like then? Now, you don't necessarily need ID. You don't need a bank account. If you don't have ID, you don't have a bank account, right?
Yeah.
Well, probably not. You don't need to have a fixed address. So what does the hiring process even look like then? Like if someone walked up to your job site, like you just mentioned, you know, with a blanket and a backpack, could it be just like, yeah, man, just grab a hammer, let's go? Like, what does that look like?
So we have a dedicated person on our staff who we call a support and training coordinator. They're basically almost like an on-staff social worker, for lack of a better term. And for people who come in and have significant barriers in particular, this person is tasked, their entire workday is centered around, what do we need to do to get those initial things in place? What do we need to do to get you a health card? What do we need to do to get a birth certificate, a SIN number, any photo ID, any of that stuff. And that is their dedicated role. And after folks have been with us for a while, that role morphs. It could be, how do we advocate to get your kiddos out of custody?
Wow.
How can we help you move into independent housing? How do we, help you pay off some of your fines or some of the stuff that some lingering justice issues? You're looking to buy a car, and you need your employer to vouch for you and say that you're good. Some of these folks have like no credit history, and it's these are folks who are often really excited to have all the trappings of a normal life now that they're on track, and there's all these real life barriers that all the rest of us have had to deal with and take for granted.
Like having a health card, having an ID, having a letter of reference. If you want to buy a car and you need like a letter of guarantee or whatever it's called. So you provide that
Yeah.
on fancy letterhead.
Yeah, and we're taking you down to SGI, and we're looking at how you get registration, and so it's really, we take a lot of pride in that kind of wraparound support that we can offer people. And this organization is lucky enough to be connected to a lot of other organizations, so we don't have to do 100% of the support. We can lean on some of our community partners to fill in the gaps that they may be better qualified to help with than we are. And my support worker helps make those connections and helps create those bridges, and we use community to support our folks.
What is your benchmark of success? And let's take it a little bit further back before we get there. What do you do when someone screws up? And when I say screw up, I mean, like, they don't show up for a few days or whatever. Like if they go MIA, like, do you reach out? Do you try to be like, hey, where are you, man? Like, we want to help. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. And, I would love to say every single person who's come through our doors has, been a shining success. But the reality is that not everybody's, in a place where they're going to be successful. And we can try all that we can, but ultimately there may be some barriers that are just too big to overcome at the moment. And it may just be that, they're just individually not ready. We have had folks who have, more or less ghosted on us. They're there one day and then we don't hear from them. We do what we can to connect. We obviously we make phone calls. We connect with family members if we can track them down. There are other support agencies. It could be a parole officer. It could be, something like that. We'll drive to their house. We'll knock on their door. We'll go to their apartment, see if we can track them down. In some cases, folks just, we lose track of them. It could be that they headed back to their hometown or back to the res or something like that. Something pulled them away. Quite often it's family emergencies. It's stuff that has happened back home that pulls them away. As much as we work on trying to make sure that folks build that communication skills, no matter what happens, just let us know. Like if you need time away, if you need to take time off, just let us know. Keep us in the loop. Sometimes folks just, there's something else that has pulled them away. We do what we can to overcome any of those kind of short-term absences, what you might call a screw up. It could be somebody has a bit of a relapse, or it could be, somebody has, brought, a tough attitude to work one day and just aren't in a good headspace to be there. We know that this kind of stuff is not linear, right? Like there's going to be peaks and valleys. There's going to be stepping back. But again, as I said earlier, like if you don't have a safety net, if you don't have people there to catch you when you're at your weakest, we can't just kick people to the curb, when they're dealing with stuff in their lives, right? Like, I mean, if you lose a brother or a sister, if you lose a parent, if you, have an addiction relapse, it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you're going through a tough time. And if you can't be there during that, then we don't deserve to exist as an organization. So it is giving people as many chances as possible, understanding that they still have it in them, that desire to keep moving forward.
Let's take a quick break here. If you're struggling with the substance use of a loved one, or have tragically lost a loved one to drug-related harms, reach out to Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Mums Stop the Harm, and or Nar-Anon groups of Saskatchewan. If you are in search of a private inpatient addictions treatment, check out Prairie Sky Recovery Centre, located in Leipzig, Saskatchewan. To make contact or to learn more about today's sponsors, check out our new merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are in the show notes below. So, do you get, when you go onto a job site, now it sounds to me like you said earlier, like we do work for other CBOs, like if someone has a leaky roof or whatever. Now, is that transactional, or does your wages come from grant funding, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so we do have some public funding support for some of the work that we do. And for some of the services we offer, cover the cost of, say, like our support worker, for example, their wages. Some of our wages come from both private and public supporters. So, for instance, the Home Depot is one of our private sponsors. And so we take a lot of that funding and put it towards crew wages. And what that does is it allows us to work like below industry cost for a lot of our CBO clients. So if I'm working with an organization that, has 5 or 6 people, it's relatively small, they rely on public funding, and they have a significant issue with their space, they may not be able to afford any kind of contractor to come in and do that work. We can almost basically do like a revenue neutral kind of situation where they help cover the cost of the materials and we kind of donate our labor. On the other hand, we have our revenue generating streams, like the city of Saskatoon has brought us on a handful of contracts. We have a couple of other streams that we use to generate revenue that offsets the work that we do in the community. So if, Grandma Smith needs, a little bit of work because her shower is leaking,
whatever,
we're not going to, charge her market rates for that repair because we don't need to. And it's something that we can do to give back to the community. And the pride that our crew takes in doing work in these communities and for vulnerable folks and in affordable housing. And they look and they see, as we work in an apartment building that is, it's gone through some tough times, and then they see it after a fresh coat of paint, and the residents are coming out and saying, thank you for the work you've done. Like, this is so much nicer. And we're happy to do that work at a cut rate because it just amplifies the work that we can do in the community. And it makes our crew feel amazing to do that work as well.
You must have had some experiences by now, and I'm trying to put myself in your crew's position, someone coming up from nothing and being known in the community to have struggled very hard or whatever, to see that person in real life contributing and painting walls, fixing Cookham's shower, stuff like that. Like, have you seen that? Have you seen community members come up and like, oh, hey, John, I'm so glad to see you doing good? And like, there's a social return on investment right there.
Absolutely. And I mean, we work with folks who come from Straight Up, for example. So the gang organization. And we've had a couple of folks who've come to us from there who have some pretty gnarly pasts, and they will disclose that, they lived a tough lifestyle before and now have got to a place in their life where, one of my chaps has actually spoken at the RCMP training college outside of Calgary as part of a gang training session for police. And he came to me a couple of days before he gave the speech. He was a bit nervous. He's like, I can't believe I'm going to be standing in a room full of cops trying to help these folks. Like, he's like, this is like a complete, like, this is messing with my head.
Yeah.
And that somebody would be as successful as they've been on that journey where they get to the point where they're actually doing some public speaking and they're hoping to amplify their voice to, share it with, he's like, young kiddos who came up the way I came up, don't have to walk this path. They need to know there's alternatives. And, that is one of the really cool ways that I'm hoping we can continue to amplify what we do, is that our crew members then take it upon themselves to take that message back to their communities, their families, the people they know, and, demonstrate through their existence that there are alternatives to the lives that many of them were living. So
do you ever have people come up, people that you're working with come up and say they don't deserve this?
There's some confusion sometimes about, like, why am I getting so many chances? Why are you people still putting up with me? Like, I feel so terrible. I feel guilty. I feel this. I feel shame and stuff like that. Feeling like they recognize that what they're receiving on, seems pretty generous, and they feel bad about not always being able to live up to that commitment. And, I think shame is a beast. And I think all of us live with it to some extent, right? And helping folks realize, like, you don't owe us anything. We're here so that you feel like you owe it to yourself. Like, you don't have to apologize to us for missing a day. Have a conversation with yourself about what it takes to make sure this doesn't happen again. Because you don't need to give me excuses. You don't need to give me apologies. Look, internally and say, like, okay, well, what is it that motivates me to get out of bed every day? And can I tap into that every day to make sure that I still keep my eyes on the prize and I still know why I'm doing this? Because it sounds like we're handing these people all kinds of things, but it is a tremendously difficult path they're choosing to walk. The rest of us may see it as, like, oh, it's bootstrapping. You just find the motivation and magically you go out and become a better person, a productive member of society. But not with these barriers, like, and not with the trauma that a lot of these folks have, and not with the demands on their life that, constantly threaten to pull them back and pull them off track. So.
So let's talk about harm reduction for a minute. And I love talking about harm reduction in ways that are beyond a regulated supply, that are beyond supervised consumption sites. That's so much of our community that's outside of this challenge seems to think, how does what you're doing reduce harms in these core communities?
I mean, what reducing harm looks like it's a wide ranging thing, right?
Yes.
It's a big conversation, but you can see on the individual level how that kind of echoes out, So if, Bill, who's working with me, who's managing their addiction, but is still struggling, manages to show up every day, is managing that addiction the right way. They're reconnecting with their family. They're bringing that positive influence out. And it used to be that Bill used to deal. And, that was how he paid for his own addiction. And Bill occasionally needed to steal to feed his addiction. And, Bill lived in a flop house with a half dozen gang members, and they were out hustling at all hours of night and creating like a sense of, an unsafe community. So for every individual that we help find an alternative way to live, I mean, that echoes out into the community, and it's you don't require a university or paper to tell you that the knock-on effect of changing a few individual lives has a real echo effect in the community. So what that harm reduction looks like, I mean, from an individual standpoint, for folks who come with us with addictions and they've had an opportunity to get purpose, they know like what they do when they get out of bed every morning means something, and they're contributing to a larger thing. I have one particular chap who was, fentanyl and meth and all of this stuff was in his background. And now he's like, I'm quitting smoking. I eat too much candy. I need to cut back on my, and he's gathered this momentum to the point where he's like, I'm loving the way I'm feeling now. And I want to keep figuring out ways to feel good. He was like, I didn't use necessarily to feel good. I used because it was like a default to just get through the misery of the day. He didn't do it. He said, I didn't do it because it made me feel happy. I didn't do it because it made me feel good. It was just a survival instinct. And he's like, now I'm figuring out things that actually make me feel good. And he's like, I want to keep doing it. And other members of the crew are now like, oh, maybe I should quit smoking. And when you see other people, making those efforts, like the knock-on effect it echoes out into the community. It echoes through families.
Well, and then there's a saying, if trauma can be passed down through generations, so too can healing. So
absolutely. And when I see my guys with their kiddos, 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old kiddos, and they're happily showing me, hey, I got to go see my kiddo for the first time in 6 months the other day. And like, I just want to be a good dad for them. I just want to, and that's got crazy.
Do you ever
impact.
choke up?
It's hard not to, not in the moment, of course,
come on.
Gotta,
safe space.
Maintain that masculine visage,
but
no, exactly. But no, I mean, it's incredibly heartwarming, and, you just throw a hug on a guy and you tell him you're proud of him, and, that this is just the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like the future is so bright for them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, did we hit it all?
About the only thing I would say is that what we do is not magic. It is not difficult to do in many ways. We operate on a shoestring budget. We have about 20 people who work for us, and we operate on the budget that would be roughly the cost of 5 police constables. And I look at the impact of what we do on a shoestring budget, and this model it's transferable. You could take this to almost any community. It doesn't have to be construction. It could be any kind of different little enterprise you want to run, that if you're able to provide people a safe space, a supportive atmosphere, you can help them walk those paths, overcome those administrative barriers, and how to fill out paperwork, and you're patient, and you give them a space where they feel like they have a community and a family. This is not rocket science.
Could this model work for a content creation strategy?
You know what? It probably absolutely could. You can have some incredible stories coming from folks if they're given the opportunity to share.
Awesome.
And I just think I hope that there are more communities and more individuals out there willing to take a chance on a group of people that don't typically get a lot of love and are often among the most marginalized. And, if you take the opinion that people have value and that people deserve second chances, we can put this into action and make it work on a far larger scale than our humble organization is currently doing. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity to talk about it.
All right. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, take care. All right. If you got something out of that episode today, please give that like button a click at the bottom of the screen. If you're not yet subscribed, please subscribe, hit that notification bell. We go live every Friday morning, every Sunday evening. We got tons of content for you to watch. That's all we got for you today. Take care, everyone.